Welcome, I'm Bruce Munro, and with me is International Relations Specialist Professor Robert Patman, and this is Global Insight. It's 2 months since a military coup overthrew the democratically elected government of Myanmar. Peaceful mass protests and an increasingly violent response by the military is evolving into a lopsided civil war in which hundreds of civilians have already been killed. How should the international community respond? Welcome, Robert.
Hi, Bruce.
What is happening in Myanmar is terrible, but it's only one of 34 attempted coups and about a dozen successful coups around the world during the last decade. Is what's happening in Myanmar just going to be a tragedy within a country's borders that is soon forgotten by the international community? Or is it somehow going to get more attention?
That's a very important question. Why do situations like Myanmar happen where a military coup occurs against a democratically elected government? And you indicated in your opening remarks that this is not an isolated incident. So why does it happen? Because there's nothing to prevent it. There's no international mechanism which is, designed to protect elections per se. To answer your question, I think what we're seeing now in stark focus is two approaches to sovereignty. There are those like China and Russia which are supporting the military authorities in Myanmar who take the view that the sovereignty of the people in power is the crucial thing, and therefore they would see any international attempt to support the overwhelming population of Myanmar, which have roundly rejected the coup, as domestic interference. On the other hand, there's another view of sovereignty which believes it's essentially a social contract between the government of a country and its population. And if the government fails in its duty to protect its people, indeed abuses them, and what we've seen is absolutely shocking. Since early February, we've seen more than 440 citizens of Myanmar killed at the hands of the military, many of whom are unarmed. In that circumstance, then according to that view of sovereignty, a broader view of sovereignty, the social contract between the government and the people, then the military authorities in Myanmar have forfeited the right to exercise responsibility, which then raises the question, what can be done about this?
And I see protests taking place in Myanmar calling for the international community to respond. An R2P protest. What is all that about?
The responsibility to protect, which was basically an international convention which was put together to capture this broader understanding of sovereignty, which does respect sovereignty but says that it is a social contract between the people and the government, and if the government abuse their people, they forfeit the right to have the sovereign protection. They forfeited the right to exercise sovereignty. And so far, that convention has never really been invoked. Those of our viewers who've got longer memories will remember that around the Darfur crisis, there was sometimes talk about perhaps the responsibility to protect should be implemented. But it is a potential weapon that could be used. The question is whether the international will exists for it to happen. But we are at something of a crossroads internationally, because I think many people are outraged by what's happening in Myanmar. And they're also outraged by the lack of international machinery to deal with this. The responsibility to protect does offer a way forward, but, as I say, is relatively untried on the international stage.
And if it was going to be attempted, it would have to be attempted through the UN?
Yes, because it's, again, you've got this business of trying to get a consensus when 5 members of the Security Council can block anything they don't like through the veto. So that's a major problem. But it's interesting to me that UN officials are now speaking as if they recognise that nothing's going to happen for the UN Security Council and are calling for international action, international emergency summits and the like, and hints about the responsibility to protect that might bypass the UN Security Council but somehow nevertheless have some sort of UN support. So I think the UN officials, the public servants who work in the UN, are extremely frustrated by the dysfunctionality that's been caused by the existence of the veto, which means that the UN can't deal with situations it was designed to deal with.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. Catch us next time on Global Insight. Ka kite anō.